Okay, this session here was put together more or less at the last minute. Some of us have a topic that we know we're going to speak about, and some of us, while we're sitting in the chair there, are deciding on what they might like to talk about. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to talk a little bit about an issue that has come up recently, and it's lovingly known as the D55 issue. And there are some people in the room, I think, that know that that's what that's about, but I'll explain it. And if Tom wants to add something to that, or Tim as well, if you want to add something, because they both have different perspectives, I'm sure, and can add something to the conversation as well. I'm going to take you back a little bit to amalgamation of the City of Ottawa. And the reason I'm doing that is I think there are many people in the room here who were opposed to amalgamation. In fact, the reason that the Carleton Landowners Association was formed in the first place was because of amalgamation. We wanted out. And hence the Carleton Landowners Association, we wanted to form our own Carleton County. So that, in fact, is where we came from. But kicking and screaming, we were brought into the City of Ottawa. Now, there were some concessions given to us because we yelled and screamed, and because we had a landowner association that said, look, we don't think we're being treated properly. So out of that came something called the Rural Summit. And that Rural Summit resulted in a couple of groups, organizations within the city being formed. One of them was the Rural Affairs Office, and that was there was a Rural Affairs Officer who was appointed. Now, the purpose, as I recall it, because I sat on that first Rural Summit, and I think a number of people in this room sat on it. The purpose of that Rural Affairs Office was for that office to assist us in understanding what the hell is going on in this big municipality. What are you imposing upon us? At least that's what I got out of it. That's what I understand. Yeah. So anyways, there was another committee that was set up, and that was the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. And again, they were to oversee rural affairs, just as the name suggests. And I guess more or less, some rural affairs have been hived off from the city and are treated a little bit differently from the rest of the city. That includes land planning. If you go to a rural affairs meeting these days, most of what you'll see happening there is zoning here, zoning here, zoning here. Does this get approval? Does that get approval? Now, I don't recall that the meetings were like that to begin with, but that seems to be what they have evolved into. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit here and tell you a little story of a property owner who happens to be my neighbor, who wanted to sever a piece of property for his son, so his son could build a house, start a family, whatever. And he was given a conditional approval for this severance. Now, the condition was that his water passed the Ministry of the Environment guidelines. Okay? Now, this gentleman spent in the neighborhood of, I think, $17,000, and the water was certified by a professional engineer. They said, yes, there are some aesthetic problems with this. It's above the guideline limit in, I think it was sulfates, wasn't it? But that can be treated. And so, therefore, I recommend that the severance go ahead. Can you guess what the city decided? No. It doesn't pass the guidelines, so therefore, after paying $17,000, you cannot have your severance. Now, let's find out, or let's consider where they took this authority. The authority comes from a couple of sentences in the 2009 official plan. Now, I don't know how many of you have read the official plan from cover to cover. I went to look, in fact, I went to purchase the official plan, the City of Ottawa's official plan. Well, after spending 15 minutes looking for it, they found a copy in the bottom of one of the drawers, and they were going to let me have it for $50. It's about that thick, and I decided not to buy it because you can get it online. But my point there is, I don't think there are many of us that actually read that from cover to cover. And even if you did read it, would you be able to understand what this language meant to you? Back to the Rural Affairs Office. Why, if they were going to be denying severances of private property for single lot residential lots, why would the Rural Affairs Officer not come and say, by the way, guys, do you know that this is the impact that this particular statement will have on you? We didn't get any of that. I don't know that there's anybody here that was told that this is what this meant. Nor did we get any heads up from our Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. I guess where we found out about it was just in the last 6 months, as I said, where a neighbor of mine had his severance denied. He went to his counselor, hoping that he could get some assistance. The counselor said, "No, that's a provincial problem. Go see Jack McLaren. He's your MPP." So he went to see Jack, and Jack says, "Well, really, it's not our problem, but I'll help you." And thus began the D55 campaign. I'll just explain a little bit more about that. I want to read first what the official plan says. And you tell me whether you think this is enough to stop a severance that has only aesthetic problems which can be treated, if that's enough to stop a severance. What it says is, pertaining to severances, prior to the approval of a severance, the proponent must demonstrate, in accordance with city guidelines, that the site can be adequately serviced with private services. Okay? As a condition of approval of any lot where the production well does not exist. No, sorry, that's the new one. In certain circumstances where concerns are identified, the city may require the proponent to drill a well and undertake a hydrogeological testing prior to the approval of the severance. So to me, when you use the word may, that means you have discretion. Okay? So the Carleton landowners, along with some assistance from Jack's office, who looked into some of this, the D55 guideline, we were able to discover that D55 does not apply to private single lot severances. In fact, it doesn't apply to private property. And in fact, it was Liz Marshall that first brought that to my attention. She looked at what they were trying to do, and she sent a document. And right there it says, does not pertain. Well, I'm the suspicious type. I don't take things for granted. So I thought, yeah, just for fun, I'm going to phone the MOE and see what they say. They say, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does not pertain to private property. So why are they applying it?
Well, that's case over.
No, it's not. We'd like to think so, but no, it is not. Further to that, I have a written email from staff at the Ministry of the Environment which says that aesthetics, meaning the problem that my neighbor had, are the responsibility of the homeowner. Should be case over, but it's not. I talked to the Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They agreed D55 does not apply to private property. Further, they said that the city has discretion in applying the official plan. Jessica and Jack had previously had a meeting with staff from Municipal Affairs and Housing on another topic. I think it was a provincial policy statement. Jack just happened to ask about the D55, and their response was that we're results-based. If what comes out of the tap is clean, then that satisfies the provincial policy statement. So all of this would lead us to believe that, indeed, it's case closed, that they should say, oops, perhaps we went further than we should go. Perhaps we shouldn't be applying this in the way that we're applying it now. We were given a process to follow. The chair of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee advised us to go to the committee, speak at open mic, ask for their practice to be reviewed. Then they would come back and they would probably say no, they were going to keep it, but then the AIRAC committee would vote on it and say, yes, we're going to continue this, and no, we're not. We're not quite sure why we were given that process to follow, because apparently that didn't work. It ended up that we went to a meeting about 3 weeks ago, and yes, indeed, they did have a staff report, and yes, indeed, staff did recommend to keep on with that practice. But after listening to 8 or 9 delegates, who said, you should not be doing this. We don't want you to be doing this. It's private property. You shouldn't be applying this, and this is why you shouldn't be applying it. We also had somebody from a water treatment company who said, yes, all this stuff can be treated. They totally ignored everything that we had and said, oh, well, we have a letter prepared that we will send to the Minister of the Environment asking them to change their guidelines. That was totally not what we asked for. In fact, the Carleton Landowners does not have a problem with D55 guidelines. We want to make sure that our communal and municipal wells are safe. And this is what they do to make sure that it's safe. And they report based on those guidelines. So to us, that's not a problem. But in the same way that the city is responsible for communal wells, we feel that homeowners should be responsible for their wells. Because once you've severed it and you've built your well, things can change. Who's responsible for it then? The homeowner. So the homeowner should be responsible for it from the beginning. That's. They read it out, but we did not. They basically what they were asking for is to update the guidelines. That's basically what they're asking. No, not to make it mandatory. To recognize
it could be treated.
Yes, to recognize it could be treated. Yeah. They
But the province didn't want to do that anyway because they said that's private land.
No, it's not a provincial problem. It's a it's a city problem. So anyways, we're at this point now where we have a certain opinion. The city has another opinion. They don't seem to be willing to engage us to move forward with our opinion. So their solution to this is to set up a committee. Jessica was talking about earlier, she was talking about wasting your time setting up a committee. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. So they're following the protocol. They're following what they should be doing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why does the landowner not just go ahead, build the house, and move in and use his wife and say, look at you guys, you don't want to play ball. I've asked you, I've done everything, and I'm here.
Yep. That's a question for the homeowner. I can't answer that.
What steps, the only steps he's got?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Now my neighbor did not go to the OMB, and so the time has passed. But that's right. Yeah, and I think that's and I think that's probably what he should do, given what we know now, because I think it would go through fairly quickly. I don't know. Jack, do you know what a permit application costs? Tom probably knows. For a severance? $2,400. Yeah. So, I mean, now the other thing is I really think that city staff erred here. It's fairly clear to me that they erred, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a lawyer's opinion. I was going to try to find some time to chat to Terry Green today, but I'm not sure. Yes, you can. Yes. Yeah.